Okay, our next guest that's on the show is Marie D. Jones, and if you just Google Marie D. Jones, and she is an amazing. She's a best-selling author, a screenwriter, a researcher, and a public speaker. She has so many different books out, and I follow her pretty closely on Facebook. She's always writing and going at it. She's appeared on television shows such as Ancient Aliens, has been a guest on hundreds of radio shows all over the world. She's a staff writer for Fate magazine, Paranoia, Intrepid magazine, and a regular contributor to New Dawn magazine. And above and beyond all of that, she's just a really, really nice person. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get Marie on. And Bill is going to stick around, too, with us for the next couple hours. Let's get them both on the air here real quick. Marie, welcome to K-Talk and the Fringe Radio Show.
Hello there.
How are you doing?
I'm good. For a Saturday night.
For a Saturday night. Bill, are you with us?
Yes. Hi, Marie.
Hi there.
It's been well over a year since we had you on the show. I watch you. I follow you on Facebook. I know you've been doing tons of radio shows. I'm like, oh, she's going to love this when I ask her. But you're such a kind person, and I want to thank you for.
Oh, of course. Now I'm actually winding down a little, so I just have a few more, and then I usually try to take December off
and take a little break.
Yeah, but it normally doesn't work that way. So we'll see.
Are you doing any? Have you done any conventions at all, Marie, this year?
I was supposed to do a couple of really big ones in October, and I had to cancel. I am a single mom, and I have a son who's got a chronic illness, and I needed to be here. And it was in October, and they were 2 weeks apart. He was going through a lot of treatments. We were trying to get him ready to have surgery, so I needed to be here. And that's kind of a bummer. This year has been really tough for me to travel. A little bit the year before, too, because of he wasn't able to walk for almost a year. We're now getting him to walk in a walker and with a cane. And
wow.
So I had to pull back, and it's a bummer because I'm not as visible as I'd like to be, although I do a lot of radio. I write a lot of books. But, I'm hoping next year that as his health improves, that he'll get to be able to go back to school, and I'll be able to get out more and travel more.
Well, family is more important no matter what.
Absolutely. And because it was such a severe situation, there's no way I would have been able to leave and just, feel good about it. So hopefully people understand. And you know what? If they don't, they don't.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, Marie, is your son Max still able to do his writing with the books?
We're working on. I just finished a nonfiction book with Larry Flaxman that was absolutely brutal in terms of the amount of research, and I have to now immediately jump into Echo 2 with Max. We have to do book 2. It's going to be it was originally going to be a trilogy, but we got the go-ahead to develop it into a 6-book series. And the last 3 books are going to be, they're going to have a lot of video gaming involved. So we're looking at merchandising and stuff. Yeah. So I have been, busting my butt trying to get through this nonfiction book, and we just shipped it off on Wednesday or Thursday. So it's Echo 2 is one of the next things in line. But yeah, it's fun, and it's really going to be a lot more sci-fi. It'll still have the real things that have happened to my son to some extent, but we're building a real sort of sci-fi mythology around it all. That's really kind of cool.
And I'm sure that helps lift his spirits too at this time.
Oh my God! You know what? He couldn't walk for a year, and he still has a hard time. And he's able to. He's kept all his friends from school, thank God. And I swear they game constantly. He does his homework, and they game. And I let him because that's what he wants to do when he gets older. He wants to develop video games. And
there's a lot of money involved in that, Marie.
Oh, but you know what? The games that he that he loves, like, hey, I'm so into Destiny and Halo. These games have amazing stories and mythologies to them.
Yes.
And I just, I get really kind of inspired because I think what's happening a lot, even with like motion pictures and TV series, is that there's like a gaming crossover.
Right.
And it's really cool, though, because it's his way to be creative.
Yes, it's less cerebral and more into the CGI.
Yeah, but it's funny because like he plays Minecraft a lot, and that game there's so much strategy and building and creating, and I see kids nowadays, they're not like when we grew up, where we went outside and played after school. We were never in the house. This is their new world, and I know a lot of parents get really down on their kids for it, but I see how it just lights him up, and he's becoming creative. He's telling stories, and I love it. So I'm all for the gaming. He doesn't do, a lot of the icky games, but he loves alien-oriented or games that have a good story behind them. Like, I love Destiny. I think that's an amazing visual game.
Yeah, that's considered one of the top games that are out right now.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Marie, I did touch a little bit on your bio, but for our listeners that don't know who you are, why don't you give us a little bit of background? How did you get into? Now I know you were a UFO researcher. I mean, you've done all kinds of different things.
I know.
How did you get into all this? Where did it all start for you?
Well, let's see. It goes way back. In terms of the writing, I've been writing since I was 2, and telling stories and writing books. I wrote a book when I was 5 about life on Mars. I think that kind of set my destiny in stone. But the weird thing is that I, even at a very young age, was really into ghosts and aliens and UFOs, and I don't remember having any kind of experience at that early age. My dad, who was a scientist, who was a geophysicist, he was really into UFOs too. And we had a neighbor that lived across the street that was also, so, they obviously were talking about it a lot in my presence. But I don't know, I just sort of feel like I kind of was born with this weird interest in 2 things, science and the paranormal, the unknown. And I always, growing up, felt like one could, that science could easily explain paranormal. We just haven't gotten to that point yet. But in terms of writing about it, I mean, I started writing for magazines when I was a teenager, and I actually started writing fiction, and then I got into writing articles for, at the time when magazines were still on paper, before we had ebooks and e-magazines. I was writing a lot of stuff about the paranormal, about the occult. Mm-hmm. And it just, into my 20s, I really, really heavily got into the ufology. And I was with MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, and Center for UFO Studies. I did some research papers for Fund for UFO Research into my 30s. And then that's when I started to really sort of get into the nonfiction and realize, oh, wow, I can totally research this stuff and have fun with it, and I can write books about it. How cool is this? So it just kind of took off from there.
With I know with ufology, I did get I took a look at UFOs and Aliens. I did take a look at that book. That's one I actually read through. You've got so many of them. Interesting book too.
That one's really cool because it's an anthology and it's a number of different contributors and really great people in the field, and everybody is sort of presenting a little bit of a different angle. And actually, New Page Books, who has published all but 2 of my books, of my nonfiction books, they put that out as part of a series. So there's one on UFOs and aliens, there's one on lost ancient knowledge, and there's another one on ghosts and spirits. And it's just such a great idea that each chapter is written by somebody different. Larry Flaxman and I, we wrote a chapter for each of those 3 books. But you've got really great people in all of those fields. And I think it's a great way for somebody to buy a book and get a real well-rounded look at the subject matter, not just one person's perspective.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Marie, during your tenure as a field investigator for MUFON, did you ever come across a case that you deemed credible?
This is a tough one. When I was in MUFON, this was back in the 80s into the 90s. I literally was there running my own group in North County, San Diego, with another gal named Laura when the abduction buzz began. So up until that point, we were looking at, just your usual sightings, visual sightings, and occasionally a physical trace case where somebody said, there's like an imprint in my yard. And those were, it's not proof, obviously. It's not proof. It's evidence in a sense, but it's not proof. So the real spooky stuff began when our group, which, we had about 20, 30 members, started being approached by people who were claiming to have been abducted. Now, we had read, the Betty and Barney Hill and all of the older classic case files, but all of a sudden, it just exploded. And we had people coming to us, and we didn't know what to do with them. We didn't know how to handle them. And that is when we began working with Yvonne Smith, who had been trained in hypnotherapy,
regression
by Bud Hopkins, and she was priceless. I was in MUFON LA for a long time, and she really was, one of the few people at the time who kind of knew what we do with these people. I would say that was the point where I started to see two things. One, the media hype and how it created a lot of people who were full of crap. Okay? So you had a lot of people coming and claiming they were abducted who wanted the attention.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell they were full of crap. But on the other side of the coin, there were people that came to us with markings on their bodies. They were terrified. They were being stalked, followed. Their phones were tapped. And very shortly after, a couple of those people came to us. My phones were tapped. And Laura, whose children had claimed to have been abducted, was being harassed by people that would come in her yard and terrorize them, and the whole Men in Black thing. And I have a story that I gave to Nick Redfern for his Men in Black book that I had never talked about publicly up until then, about why I got out of MUFON and got out of the UFO field. And it was because somebody was calling me that knew things about me that they shouldn't have, that was watching me. Apparently my phone, not only was my phone tapped, but this person could see inside my apartment.
Wow.
And the only thing that I could figure was that they were trying to scare us from working with some of these abductees, that we were onto something. But it worked. At the time it was, I didn't know a lot at the time about how to deal with, now, they can stop you in all kinds of ways. But at the time it was like, what? I could just forget it. I'm going to step out for a while. And I did. I stepped out for a while. And later on I started to write about UFOs. And I haven't been bothered since. So that definitely showed me that Laura and I were meeting people that were critical. They were important in some way. And unfortunately, she ended up literally leaving Southern California because of the harassment.
Wow.
So we really never, we really never found out. One of the abductees, I became really good friends with his wife, and he and his wife, and you ask me if there's proof or if I believe something happened. Oh, absolutely. These people didn't want to go public, but they were terrified. And they had PTSD, and something happened. I don't know if it had anything to do with aliens or if it was the government or some weird mind control experiment, but you could definitely tell the people that had something happen. They were a mess.
But do you believe that the climate is changing today as compared as it was when you were doing back in the day, that more people are feeling more comfortable about discussing it, coming out about their witnessing their sightings and experiences?
Oh, absolutely, and thank God for the internet.
Yeah.
The internet has been a blessing and a curse, not just for ufology, but the paranormal. It's been a blessing because it's bringing together so many people that have had experiences to share and talk and discuss and, debate and dialogue. The curse part of it is the same thing, though, is that you've got, everybody and their brother claiming, oh, look at this YouTube, I have Bigfoot on here, or look at the UFOs, and they're just little dots of light. And so we have information overload now in terms of paranormal, and I include UFOs in that. But at the same time, we also have the ability to reach out to people all over the world and say, hey, this happened to me. Anybody else? Anybody else have these same experiences? So, yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, I think.
Well, the internet. Go ahead, Pat. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying the whole abduction phenomenon is it's quite interesting. It's scary. I'm not a researcher by any means. I just I peruse through a lot of articles and stuff, and I've talked to Kathleen Marden and different people about this, and it's a touchy subject because I think a lot of people that claim to be abducted, it really falls right in line with the sleep paralysis.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's almost.
I've had.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a dead ringer for it. I'm not saying that other things can't possibly happen, but it is a touchy subject, and it emotionally. I interviewed Yvonne Smith, and the people that experience this stuff. I know there's a few people out there in the UFO community. I won't drop no names, but some of it's kind of a mockery. I think some of it, I would hope nobody's doing it to make a quick buck. But the people that want to remain nameless, they don't want to go public with this type of stuff because it's so traumatic.
It is, and that's again. To be involved in it when it was just kind of really breaking out. It was very under the radar for a long time, where you just had a couple of really big cases that if you were in the field, you knew about. But in terms of the public and it being all over the media, to be involved in the field at that time was very frustrating and confusing because we didn't have the training. I mean, when you belong to MUFON, and I think it's still the same, we went through very intensive training. They have a manual. You take a test. That test is not easy. I think I got an 87, and I'm pretty damn smart. I got 100% on my ham radio, exam.
There you go.
And I could only get 87 on my, that's how tough it is because they cover everything from science to and physics and electronics and engineering and being able to identify different military prototypes, just everything. So MUFON is a really well put together, highly trained organization, or at least it was at the time. And yet here we had this phenomenon that we were all kind of looking at each other going, okay, do we call psychologists?
Right.
How do we help these people without hurting them?
Mm-hmm.
But again, there are people out there trying to make a buck off of it.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about writers and researchers. I'm talking about people who are claiming to be something they are not. And I know of a couple, and I will not say their names. Whatever their karma will catch up to them. But I know of a couple who I was aware of back in the day, and I knew they were frauds then.
Yeah.
But how do you explain, the thousands of people, if not more? And here's my take. It very well could be that there are a number of things happening, and it's almost like you have a little bit of evidence for actual, alien civilizations coming here and treating us the same way that we treat wildlife when we go out and hunt it down, tag it so we can study it, or throw it in the zoo or whatever. It could be a psychological phenomenon, something involving, I love the idea of these tulpas, these entities that we actually create out of the collective consciousness. and that they shift and change with the times, which would explain why we've gone from the benevolent contactees that have the long blonde hair and the white robes and they're very Christ-like, to the more sinister grays, to the absolutely hands-down evil reptilians. It's almost like that's shifted with the perceptions of the public. But one thing that's really interesting is the book that I just finished is the history of mind control. And one of the things that I learned was that, and I didn't know this, it's nice to learn stuff I didn't know about, but I didn't know that there was a mind control angle as well, that the MK Ultra experiments that were done in the 50s into the 60s, some of them involved trying to create an abduction scenario in somebody's mind.
Wow.
And it's similar to that sleep paralysis element.
Right.
Where, you could maybe drug someone and program them to actually think they're having this. Now, I'm not saying that it's proven, but it was such an interesting new angle. And I thought, oh, here's another, throw another piece of wood on the fire.
Exactly.
So I know that there are people that have had markings on their body that, you just don't know. You don't know who to trust. You don't know who to believe. You don't know what their motives or agendas are. You don't know if they're misinterpreting something that happened to them. But at the same time, we also can't say that they weren't abducted by aliens.
Exactly. Exactly. You want to take a phone call, Marie?
I'm sorry?
You want to take a call?
Sure.
Sure. Caller, welcome to K-Talk. You're on with Marie D. Jones.
Yeah, I was listening. It's funny she's mentioning markings on abductees' bodies because I called last week.
Oh, I can't hear him at all.
I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
There you go. There you go.
It was funny that she mentioned markings because I called last week.
Uh-huh.
And I have a triangular marking on my inner part of my left arm. And I've seen a lot to think that something might be going on. I had a UFO close encounter in 2001. I've seen orbs in close proximity to me. And I had an experience with missing time. So I have no memories of an alien abduction.
Right.
But I'm left with a lot of observations and a marking on my body also. It's making me think that possibly I am an abductee.
Or a contactee.
Mm-hmm.
One or the other. I called last week, and in 2001, I was just about ready to go to bed that night, and I was lighting my cigarette up at the house, and as I got an urge to go outside. And my first, I remember thinking to myself, let me go outside. It was almost like I was anticipating when something would be out there.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So the next thing I know, I walk out the front door and I go out to look out into the back wooded property behind the house. And in between the gap of the trees, just below top of the tree levels, I see these white spheres of light, like balls. And they're going around in a counterclockwise rotation, circling around. I could see the light dropping from the rear and coming around. And there was no, trees weren't swaying, there was no noise being emitted. I couldn't make any shape of an object out. I could just observe these lights circling.
Interesting.
Okay, and the strange thing is that I'm an identical twin, and my brother has seen the same orb, same description, and I've traced abduction signs from childhood up until now. And like waking up with nosebleeds as a young child, and also I'd wake up with strange cuts on the top of the roof of my mouth, slices, and it wasn't painful, it was just sore up there, so I'd rub my tongue against these cuts, and skin would be hanging down from them. And anyway, the cuts healed pretty quickly. They rapidly healed. Probably within a half an hour or so, they were fully healed. So, like I'm saying, I'm left with a mark and other things, and the things I've seen, it's making me wonder if I'm an abductee. But once again,
Yeah,
I have no memories of being abducted.
That's how it's, I think that's the intention, is for you to not have conscious memories. And I think, the subconscious is where all that stuff ends up. And really the only way to know is to just document everything that happens to you. Try to video or, get some kind of physical, visual evidence of it. But if you feel really compelled, I might, if I were you, I might seek out somebody who is very good at, hypnotic regression and just see.
Right.
Because it could be something else going on, that you want to know. Now, I've had missing time, too, and I actually had missing time in a part of Los Angeles that I later found out from Ann Stryber, Whitley Strieber's wife, was where a lot of UFO abductions occurred. To me, I just lost 2 hours of time while driving on the freeway. I have no recollection of any such thing happening. But if you have had a lifetime, and that's usually the case with the abductees that are more credible, is that it is something that has gone on from their childhood. It's almost like the way that we look at and observe particular animals. We track them and we follow them over their lifespans to learn about them. I think it's the same thing.
What can I do about this marking on my body?
Is it hurting you?
No, I just woke up one morning with it. And
I just think you need to photograph it and get some evidence of it every time it happens, and then
but this mark has been here for at least 16 years. It never grew, never changed shape or anything.
What has your doctor said about it?
I showed it to a doctor when I was in the hospital for bronchitis, and she told me it was a birthmark. I said, no, it isn't, because this just appeared out of nowhere. And after that, she had no explanation.
Yeah, I think it's really just you've got to document every single thing that you can think of that ever happened or that's happening now. And if there's still things that you think are going on, I hate to sound like Paranormal Activity, but turn on a video camera and let it run, or always have a camera with you, have your phone with you.
Or reach out to MUFON,
Yeah,
MUFON did come in August. Yeah. MUFON did come in August.
Yeah.
I would like to ask the caller a question. Has your brother experienced any similar experiences or markings on his body?
He has no markings, but he's, like I told you, had the same cut at the same age, and he's also seen the same orb that I've seen.
Okay.
Same description, same size, everything. And the orb is orange, yellowish in color, like a street light. That color.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And too much is going on for me not to think something isn't going on.
Right. Uh-huh. That's
why,
if I were you, I would want to know. I would seek out, just try to find the most.
Yeah, but who do I trust? Because I don't know if I can trust everybody.
Look for your local MUFON group. They're usually very professional.
Are you located in Salt Lake City?
Me? No, I'm located in Long Island, New York.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sure there's a New York MUFON.
There is. I recently contacted the MUFON, and he is in Long Island.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good place to start.
No. Like I said, he came out in August because he wanted me to take to him with the UFO I described to you. He wanted to go, and he's saying, he's doing measurements, and he took satellite pictures of the property. He's doing measurements and everything, and he did come down, so I'm kind of interested in his findings.
Yeah, and I think beyond that, if I were you, I would try to ask them for a reference to a really good hypnotist and just see if your subconscious can give you any clues to what may have happened.
Before I go, I just want to state one thing to you guys.
Yeah.
Before I go, is that I was saying things that I had no knowledge of. I used to be hanging out with a friend named Tito, and this was before I was even talking about UFOs and researching. And I told my friend Tito, when they're done with you, they wipe your memory. and there's no way I could have known that
Yeah.
because I wasn't even researching.
That's pretty common. That
It is?
abductees have no memory of what happened, but they know something did because they're traumatized. And they might have some vague memories because the subconscious can't trap everything completely. Things will seep through into your conscious memory.
So you're saying that could have been part of it, you're saying?
I mean, if they're doing things to people, and again, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing sinister things. They could just be studying us the same way we study animals out in the wild.
Right.
But if they're doing that, obviously they don't want any resistance, and they want to keep watching the same people, so they need them to be kind of unaware of what's going on. So yeah, they're gonna find a way to, and that's not a very difficult thing to do, to somehow stimulate the part of the brain that has short-term memory and just sort of wipe it clean.
We're gonna go ahead and move on. Just one last thing I could throw out to you. You may want to reach out to Kathleen Martin.
Yeah.
Yes, I've contacted Denise Stoner.
Yeah. I mean,
and she's talked to Kathleen Martin for me. Yes, I'm seeking that kind of help. Yes.
And let them, just it may take time, but point you in the right direction without a doubt.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, thanks for the call, my friend. Take care.
Take care.
Good night.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to, guys. Is again, it's a touchy subject because, like that gentleman, it affects him. It does. You start questioning your own sanity.
Right, and you become fearful of things, and you're not even sure why. You get, hypervigilant, and yeah, I mean, it is. It's almost like a mild form of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
People have physical ailments that suddenly appear, and they don't really know what it's related to. They just have sort of a vague sensation that something happened or that something is happening.
Exactly.
And it's just it's like ghosts. We still haven't proven. Nobody's ever captured one and, held it up and let it talk. And it's just tough because you don't want to tell these people that they're, I don't believe you. But there is a chance that something different is happening that they're misinterpreting. And unfortunately, when it comes to personal and subjective experiences, we may never really know. We really may, because we only have their word to go on and what little evidence they can show us.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You miss MUFON when you start talking about stuff like that?
I do. You know what? I really miss it. But being a writer is more than a full-time job, and I just could not be in a group. Whether it's a paranormal group or MUFON, I couldn't make the commitment. So,
Maria, are you still actively involved with the Arkansas Paranormal Anomalous Studies too?
That's Larry's organization, and we haven't done very much lately because we've been so embroiled with writing books, and I'm not sure how many investigations they've done this year, but what we were doing, and we actually kind of wrote a book out of the research that Larry was doing, was Larry and I would come up with different ideas that we wanted to try out, and he had this large group of people, and he had these wonderful locations to go to where we could he could try things out. He lives in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm in Southern California.
Mm.
So we did do a lot of stuff that we ended up writing about in our book, The Grid, but we haven't done that much lately, so it's kind of like on hold right now. We really have been busy just jumping from book to book. So I think now we're taking a little bit of a break. And so
you do have a book coming, though, with Larry, Mind Wars, though, next year, right?
Yeah, Mind Wars is the history of mind control and electronic surveillance. It'll be out in April, and that was mind-blowing, to say the least, because I had no idea how much information is out there on the subject of mind control and how much of it is legitimate. We do talk about the conspiracy stuff, of course, but there is so much legitimate information of real mind control programs, and especially when you get into surveillance with satellites, drones.
9/11 changed everything.
Oh, it's insane. Everything that you own is watching you, and you can't go anywhere outside where you don't run the risk of being on camera somewhere.
Right.
And so it was really an eye-opener.
See, I think there's a fine line, though. There's a fine line, because let's say I'm originally from New York City, and obviously there is a need to have cameras in that densely populated area.
Oh, it's definitely a crime deterrent, and it also, when crimes are committed, there you go. You've got everything on. I totally agree.
But the only thing is, where does it end? There's a fine line.
Right.
I mean, will the police department still be flying drones over parks, over neighborhoods, over your house? I mean, how invasive can it get? I mean,
exactly. And there's been a couple of news stories really recently about drones that were unidentified over nuclear power plants.
well,
And it's like, wait a second. These could be, terrorist drones, and a lot of drones can be equipped with weapons. What are they doing flying over nuclear power plants? That's not good. And nobody knew where they came from, if they were commercial or if they were somebody. That's the thing now, is that you can, for a few $100, you can make your own. There's a group here in where I live in Carlsbad, a bunch of guys that make drones to work in the motion picture industry. And they were out testing them. My sister and I were walking at the beach one day, and we saw them testing them. And, oh, my God, they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. But you could use those things for all kinds of sinister purposes. And, they're some of them could have viruses that they unleash. Who knows? And how do you know when you look at a drone, if you see it at a distance, if it's your local police department or, some other, I don't know. They're just really scary.
One thing I don't know if your book's going to address that or not, Marie, but have you ever interviewed or looked into people that claim that they're targeted individuals?
Yes, I have. We have a whole chat, really fascinating.
Yeah, we've had a couple of shows. We've actually had Dr. John Hall on from Dallas, Texas. He's a surgeon at a big hospital down there in Texas. And it's interesting. The people we did the show, and the calls just came in all night. The people that are having these things happen to them, I mean, I think it's 10 times worse than the alien abduction scenario. These people are just, not only are they scared, but they're mad. They're very angry individuals.
Oh, yeah.
But, again, I think there could be some people that maybe, I'm going to put it in a nice way, that maybe should be taking some meds. There's some people that,
I agree. I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
But there are...
Yeah, but not only that, but they may be totally misinterpreting
as
something else.
Yes. But very strong opinions on that. And that show that we did, the phone, it went crazy for 2 hours. And people that just call in and say they're watched from the minute they get up to when they go to the bathroom, to when they go to do their laundry, to when they eat, to when they go to the stores.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's funny.
The book is, I don't want to say it's an introduction, because there's so much information that every topic that we covered could have been a book in itself. So each chapter takes on something different. Like we've got the history as it goes on, and by the time we get to the later part, there's a whole chapter on V2K, voice-to-skull technology, which just blows me away, because I think I've had some experience with that. Directed energy weapons, microwave bombing, gang stalking, street theater, all that stuff. And Ron Patton, who is the owner of the Paranoia Bookstore, and he's the executive producer of Paranoia TV, and he helped so much in pointing me to, okay, here's some legitimate things you can look into. And, what we do in the book that's really cool is we document the symptoms that people report when they're being gang stalked or when they're experiencing V2K or any of the other number of things that are happening to people. And I am sure, because this book is going to be a little more mainstream, I'm sure it's going to, a lot of people are going to say, whoa, this has been happening to me and I never heard of their
Right.
name. This is really, because if you're not in that sort of, and I hate to use the word conspiracy because I have a lot of respect for that word, but, a lot of people take it in a negative way. But if you're not aware of the stuff that they talk about in the conspiracy arena,
Marie, I got a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Do you think that the government uses the media as a tool for manipulation to cause fear-mongering or raise
absolutely.
hysteria?
Sure. I think
Especially now with this Ebola.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. But it's also this. I think it's two things. I don't always think we need to blame the government because sometimes it's just the media wanting to sensationalize and jump on stories so they could get the best ratings when they have not researched the story well enough.
Right.
So those two things are going on, and I also think now there is a huge corporate influence on the media. So forget the government. You've got corporations and powerful CEOs that are literally dictating what you see on the news. And, yeah, I mean, it's like, how do we know when we watch the news what's real and what's not?
Because there's so much negativity on the news, and we were talking about people that think they're being watched, and, this can cause people to get a sense of paranoia of what's going on around them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the idea is to keep people submissive. Oh, you guys still there?
Well,
Yeah.
We're here.
Okay. To keep them afraid, keep them submissive, right? Keep them stupid.
Yep.
And kind of tell them what they should be spending their money on. I think it all works together. I don't watch the news anymore except to see the sports and the weather, which is usually wrong anyway. I manage to get my news from a variety of sources that I try to get a balance. I always look for the source of the information being presented to make sure it's not, some of these sites, that you see on Facebook that aren't even real. If you read the article, and it's like, wait a minute, this person is saying a bunch of stuff, but there's no source information, there's no origin information here. Who said this? An alleged eyewitness, I think you can get better news by not watching the news. It's really tough. You turn on even your regular little local networks now, and they're all jumping on the hype bandwagon. And they're saying stuff that isn't true. They're saying stuff that they heard from another news source or another news show.
Exactly.
And the Ebola thing was a perfect example. I have a book coming out next year about infectious diseases called Bugs. I've been studying Ebola for 40 years. It's not an epidemic. It never was.
Right.
At the same time that was going on, there was some really strange diseases wiping or, moving through the American South and the Southwest. And they were all mosquito-borne, and they're still around. There was an enterovirus here, Southern California, that was crippling children in Colorado and parts of the Southwest. Not to mention the fact that, I think it's 28 people die every day from drunk drivers. Why are we focusing on Ebola? There was a motivation to that, and it was to scare us, for any number of reasons.
Right.
But then when you really read about it and got down and looked at it, there was nothing substantial to the story. Nothing. And now it's gone, and I'm waiting for the next big thing.
Well, yeah,
and
it's.
Does anybody remember the people in that airline that went down, at the Malaysian airline? I mean, that just disappeared, didn't
Right.
it?
What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, my God. I don't know. There were two of them, right? There was one that went down in the ocean, they think. And then there was the newer one where they actually are finding all the remains and stuff. But the first one, I know that things can crash deep into the ocean, and there are canyons and all kinds of caverns that it could be stuck in, and we may never find it. But it just, all of a sudden, the media just stopped. reporting on it. Then he jumped on to the next exciting thing.
Well, and it was you know, I think we're talking about MH370, the one that went down over the ocean.
Right.
It's so interesting because yeah, you're right. It seemed like they were on track. They were searching. I believe the Australian government is still out there searching. I don't know if it's nothing more than a dog and pony show. And then, of course, on the internet. But, you know, you've got to question it. There's people that, you know, were supposedly some couple of the passengers were able to grab pictures with their cell phones, and they said, you know, we're on a runway somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Here's a picture of where we're at. It runs the gamut. It's crazy, but it has died down. There's nothing reported on it right now.
I haven't heard a word. I can only imagine how the families must feel. And, you know, where are those people?
Right.
I find it hard to believe.
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No,
I was just going to say, I find it hard to believe that plane crashed and was intact when it went down, and no debris has either washed up or been found by ships. I find that very odd.
It's just really strange. But you would think, I mean, I have read about other planes that have gone down that took years to even find the black box. I know it's possible, but it just seems improbable because it was a big plane. And I don't know. I don't even know what to think, but it is a perfect example of how the media just jumps from one thing to another. And it's like once they're off of a subject, forget it. You know, we're done. It doesn't matter that there still might actively be a story involved. They're on to the next big thing.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Matter of fact, the Christian Science Reporter actually today reported the flight is just declared a loss. That's it.
Yeah. Isn't that bizarre?
You know, and some people are saying that, you know, there's some agencies that, you know, private agencies that want to find funding to continue, but pretty much everybody has written everything off. Maria, we've got to take an NBC News break. Can we keep you for another go-around?
Absolutely.
You want to talk about more of your books and
Sounds good.
National Bullying Month and all kinds of other fun stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
You got it. Our guest tonight from California is Marie D. Jones. She's an awesome guest. We appreciate she's back again. And our good friend Bill Forte, who's been with us here for almost, it's going to be 4 hours, Bill. I want to thank you for sitting in tonight with me as well. It's a lot of fun.